My name is Oakley Johnson, 68 years old, and I never imagined my own son would betray me this way. Walter told me we were going for a routine checkup, but instead left me stranded at Pine Grove Retirement Home. While I sat confused in a tiny room, he and his wife Diana were already preparing to sell my house and take my car. They thought they had won, that I was too old and helpless to fight back. They had no idea what I was capable of, or the surprise I had in store for them. Tell me where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal, revenge, and ultimately justice that will leave you stunned. Before my world turned upside down, I lived what most would consider a good life. After losing my beloved wife Louise to cancer 5 years ago, I had created a peaceful existence in our family home. The 2-story colonial on Maple Street had been completely paid off for over a decade. With 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, where Louise once prepared holiday meals, and a backyard where my vegetable garden flourished, it was more than enough space for a widower, but it was filled with 43 years of memories that I cherished. I had adjusted to widowhood as well as anyone could. The first year was the hardest, waking up, reaching for someone who wasn't there anymore. But gradually I established new routines. Morning coffee on the back porch watching cardinals visit the bird feeder Louise had installed. Afternoons tending to my tomatoes, bell peppers, and zucchini. Evenings with a good book or volunteering at the local library where I read to children during story hour, their wide eyes and imagination, reminding me of when Walter was young. Walter, my only son, lived about 20 minutes away with his wife Diana and my 2 grandchildren. Amanda was 12, a bright girl with her grandmother's analytical mind and passion for science. Trevor was 9, an energetic boy who loved when I taught him to fish at the community pond. I saw them every other Sunday when they would visit for dinner. Not as often as I would have liked, but I understood that their lives were busy with school activities and Walter's accounting career. My relationship with Walter had always been somewhat formal. He was respectful but distant, even as a child. Diana was cordial but never warm. I always sensed she viewed our family gatherings as obligations rather than pleasures. Still, I was grateful for the connection, and especially for the time with my grandchildren who brought genuine joy into my life. Financially, I was secure. My house was worth approximately $850,000 in our increasingly desirable suburb. I drove a 3-year-old SUV that I had purchased outright after retirement. Between my pension from 40 years as a civil engineer, Social Security benefits, and the conservative investments Louise and I had made throughout our marriage, I had a monthly income of around $4,000. This covered my modest expenses with enough left over to occasionally treat my grandchildren or donate to causes Louise and I had supported together. Despite what Walter would later claim to authorities, my health was good for someone approaching 70. I had some arthritis in my knees that made gardening more challenging but not impossible. I took medication for high blood pressure that kept it well controlled. My annual checkups showed nothing of concern. I could drive safely, maintain my home, prepare my meals, and handle all personal care without assistance. I was active in the community, volunteering not just at the library, but also at the local food bank once a month. Frank Thompson, my next-door neighbor for over 20 years, became my closest friend after Louise passed. At 70, Frank was a retired high school history teacher who had lost his wife to Alzheimer's 3 years before I lost Louise. We bonded over our shared grief and gradually formed a friendship based on mutual support and shared interests. We watched baseball games together, helped each other with home repairs, and sometimes just sat in companionable silence on his porch or mine, 2 men who understood that sometimes presence means more than conversation. The true highlights of my weeks were the moments with my grandchildren. Amanda would bring her science projects for my review, beaming with pride when I helped her understand principles of physics or biology. Trevor and I shared a special connection through fishing. I had taught him to cast a line when he was just 5, and seeing his excitement when he caught his first base was a memory I treasured. We would sit by the pond for hours, sometimes catching fish, sometimes just talking about whatever was on the mind of a 9-year-old boy. These were the moments that made my life full despite the absence of Louise. I had given Walter and Diana a spare key to my house years ago for emergencies. They rarely used it, always calling before stopping by, which I appreciated. I never thought to question their motives, or imagined they would see my home as anything other than the family home where Walter had grown up, and where his children now created new memories during their visits. In my bedroom, I kept a photograph of Louise on the nightstand. Sometimes I still talked to her before falling asleep, sharing the events of my day as I had for over 4 decades of marriage. Her gardening gloves hung on a hook by the back door. I had donated most of her clothes to charity, but kept her favorite sweater in my closet. These weren't shrines to grief, but touchstones of comfort, reminders of a love that had shaped my entire adult life. I believed I had created a good life for myself after losing Louise. I had friends, hobbies, family connections, and community involvement. I was financially secure, physically capable, and mentally sharp. I owned my home outright and could manage all aspects of independent living without difficulty. I never imagined that the people I should have been able to trust most in the world would see me not as a person deserving of dignity and respect, but as an obstacle between them and what they wanted most, my assets. The changes began so subtly I almost missed them. About 8 months ago, Walter and Diana started visiting more frequently. Instead of every other Sunday, they began dropping by midweek as well. At first, I was pleased, thinking they wanted to spend more time with me. But there was something different about these visits. They felt less like family gatherings and more like inspections. Diana would arrive with groceries I hadn't requested, opening my refrigerator without asking and commenting on what I did or didn't have. "Oakley, you need more fresh vegetables," she would say, despite the abundance from my garden. Or, "You should be drinking those protein shakes for seniors. I read they help prevent muscle loss." During one such visit, Walter wandered through the house, looking at everything with an appraising eye. "You know," he said casually, "the Petersons down the street just sold their house for $975,000. Their place is smaller than yours." Diana nodded enthusiastically. "Property values in this neighborhood are just skyrocketing. You are sitting on a gold mine, Oakley." The conversation shifted to my finances in ways that made me uncomfortable. Walter asked if I had updated my will recently. He wanted to know the details of my life insurance policy, the specific amounts in my investment accounts, and whether I kept cash in the house. "At your age, Dad, you should have all your affairs in order," he said, though I had handled all financial matters for decades without his input. When I mentioned planning to use some savings to replace the aging roof, Diana quickly objected. "You should save that money for potential medical expenses," she insisted. "Medicare doesn't cover everything, you know." "Dad, you never know when you might need specialized care," Walter added. "People in their 60s and 70s often need assisted living sooner than they expect." During the same period, Diana began complaining about their 3-bedroom house being too small for their family. "The kids are getting older. They really need their own space now," she sighed. "Amanda is almost a teenager. She can't share a room with her brother anymore." "We've looked at some larger homes," Walter explained, "but the market is so competitive right now, we just don't have enough for a down payment on something decent in a good school district." Their comments about my house became more frequent and pointed. Diana would remark how difficult it must be for me to clean all these rooms or manage the stairs to the 2nd floor. Walter expressed exaggerated concern about me living alone. "What if you fall and no one is here to help you?" he would ask. "Remember Mr. Lincoln from your old office, found dead at the bottom of his stairs after 3 days. No one even knew." Mr. Lincoln had been 91 and suffering from severe balance issues, nothing like my situation. But pointing this out only led to Walter giving me a condescending smile, as if I was being unreasonably stubborn. My daily routines became subject to their scrutiny and criticism. Diana reorganized my kitchen cabinets without asking, moving items from higher shelves to lower ones. "You shouldn't be reaching overhead so much," she explained, when I found my coffee mugs in a different cupboard. Walter brought over frozen meals high in sodium and preservatives, nothing like the fresh food I preferred to cook. You shouldn't be on your feet cooking for one person, he insisted. These are much more convenient. When Diana saw me working in my vegetable garden, she made a show of concern. All that bending and kneeling can't be good for your joints, she said. You should hire someone to take care of the yard work now. They began to limit my time with Amanda and Trevor, the brightest spots in my life. When I asked if the kids could come stay with me for a weekend, as they occasionally had in the past, Walter claimed they were too busy with activities. Amanda has science club, and Trevor started soccer, he explained. Their schedules are just packed these days. When the grandchildren did visit with their parents, Diana would interrupt our conversations. Don't tire Grandpa out with all your stories, she would tell them. He needs his rest at his age. Once Amanda looked at me with confusion. But Grandpa doesn't look tired, she said. We were just talking about my science project. Diana hushed her immediately. Adults get tired in different ways than children, Amanda. Respect your grandfather's needs. Walter began offering to help with my finances, suggesting he should be added to my bank accounts to make it easier to pay bills if I ever became ill. When I politely declined, saying I had everything under control and automated bill payments set up, he seemed irritated. I'm just trying to look out for you, Dad, he said with a sigh. You're not getting any younger, and these things can get complicated. I began to feel infantilized, as if my age had suddenly rendered me incapable of making decisions I had successfully made for decades. My choices were questioned, my abilities doubted, my independence slowly eroded through 1,000 small comments and actions. Frank noticed the change in Walter and Diana's behavior before I fully admitted it to myself. One evening, as we sat on his porch watching the sunset, a beer in hand, he cautiously broached the subject. I've been noticing your son and his wife coming around more often, he said. Everything okay with them? I shrugged. They seem more interested in spending time with me lately. Should be a good thing, right? Frank took a long sip of his beer before responding. My sister went through something similar with her son a few years back. Started with extra visits, lots of concern about her living alone. Then suggestions about selling her house because it was too much for her to manage. Walter is just being attentive, I defended. He worries about me since Louise passed. Frank gave me a look that said he wasn't convinced. Just be careful, Oakley. Not everyone has your best interests at heart, even family, especially when there's property and money involved. I brushed off his concerns, unwilling to believe my own son would view me as nothing more than assets to be acquired. Walter had his flaws like anyone, but surely he wouldn't stoop to something so calculated and cruel. Then came the day Walter accidentally left some printouts of nursing home brochures on my coffee table after a visit. When I questioned him about it on his next visit, he claimed he had been researching for an elderly uncle of Diana's. Just gathering information, Dad. Always good to know the options out there for seniors. I wanted to believe him, but the seed of doubt had been planted. As I watched Walter and Diana drive away that day, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. Something had changed, and for the first time I began to wonder if I was safe in my trust of my only son. The day that changed everything began like any other Sunday morning. I was enjoying my coffee on the back porch, watching goldfinches at the bird feeder, when my phone rang. It was Walter, his voice, unusually bright and cheerful. Morning, Dad. Listen, I know this is last minute, but I was wondering if I could take you to your doctor appointment today. Diana and I are free, and I know how you hate driving to medical appointments. I was confused. I don't have a doctor appointment today. My annual physical isn't for another 3 months. There was a brief pause before Walter continued smoothly. Dr. Matthews called me yesterday. They had a cancellation and wanted to move your appointment up. I thought they would have called you directly too. I had no recollection of any such call, but Walter sounded so certain. And it wasn't entirely implausible that my doctor's office might have called Walter as a backup contact. Still, something felt off. I'm not prepared for an appointment today, I objected. I haven't fasted or anything. It's just a general wellness check, Dad. No blood work this time. They said to come as you are. We can grab lunch afterward. Still hesitant, but seeing no reason to refuse, I agreed. Walter said he would pick me up in an hour, giving me time to shower and dress. As I prepared, a small voice of caution whispered in my mind. Why would my doctor's office call Walter instead of me directly? And why would they schedule an appointment on a Sunday? But I pushed these thoughts aside, unwilling to believe my son would lie about something like this. Walter arrived precisely at 9 with Diana in the passenger seat. They were both dressed more formally than usual for a Sunday morning. Walter wore a button-down shirt and pressed slacks instead of his usual weekend polo and jeans. Diana was in a navy dress I hadn't seen before. Her hair neatly styled her expression, a fixed smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Where are the kids?" I asked as I buckled into the back seat. "They have a study group today," Diana replied quickly. "School project. They send their love." As we drove, I noticed we weren't taking the familiar route to my doctor's office in the medical plaza downtown. When I pointed this out, Walter gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles whitening slightly. Dr. Matthews moved his practice, Dad. New medical building on the north side of town. Much nicer facilities. This was news to me. I had seen Dr. Matthews just 2 months ago for a minor sinus infection, and there had been no mention of an upcoming move. But perhaps it had been a recent development. After about 30 minutes of driving, far longer than it should have taken to reach any medical facility in our town, Walter turned into a sprawling complex I had never seen before. Manicured lawns surrounded a large brick building with white columns and flower boxes beneath many windows. A discreet sign near the entrance read, "Pine Grove Retirement Community." My stomach dropped. "Walter, this isn't a doctor's office. This is some kind of nursing home." Walter parked the car and turned to face me with what he probably thought was a reassuring smile. "We thought we'd stop here first, Dad, just to take a look around." Take a look around for what I demanded, though a sinking feeling told me I already knew the answer. Diana jumped in, her voice overly cheerful. "It's a beautiful facility, Oakley. They have independent living apartments, assisted living, and full nursing care all in one place. Many people your age are choosing communities like this now. No home maintenance, built-in social activities, dining services." "I haven't chosen anything of the sort," I said firmly. "I'm perfectly happy in my home. And there is no doctor appointment today, is there?" Walter at least had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "We thought it would be easier this way, Dad, just to come see the place, without a lot of argument beforehand." "So you lied to me," I stated flatly. "We care about you," Diana interjected. "We just want what's best for you as you age." Reluctantly, I got out of the car, my knees stiff from the long ride. As we walked toward the entrance, I noticed Walter removing a small duffel bag from the trunk that I hadn't seen him pack. The lobby was pleasantly decorated with comfortable furniture and tasteful artwork. A few elderly residents sat in the common area, some watching television, others playing cards. Most looked significantly older and frailer than me, many using walkers or wheelchairs. A woman in a tailored suit approached us with a professional smile. "You must be the Johnsons. I'm Sandra Miller, admissions coordinator. We're so pleased you're considering Pine Grove for Mr. Pine Grove, Johnson Sr." My head snapped toward Walter. "Considering there's nothing to consider. I'm not moving anywhere." Sandra looked momentarily confused, glancing between me and Walter. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in my office." In her small office, Sandra pulled out a folder with my name on it. "I have all the preliminary paperwork here that your son sent over. Medical history, financial information, power of attorney documentation." "Power of attorney," I echoed, my voice rising. "I never gave anyone power of attorney over my affairs." Sandra looked uncomfortable, glancing between Walter and me. "According to the documents we received, your son has medical power of attorney due to your beginning stages of cognitive decline." "Cognitive decline," I nearly shouted. "There's nothing wrong with my mind." Walter placed a hand on my arm, squeezing slightly too hard. "Dad, remember what Dr. Matthews said about your memory issues? The small strokes you've been forgetting things. The stove left on twice last month. The missed appointments." None of this had happened. I hadn't missed any appointments. never left the stove on, and certainly never had any strokes, small or otherwise. I stared at my son, truly seeing him for the first time. The stranger wearing my son's face looked back at me with false concern masking calculation. "I think there's been a serious misunderstanding," I said carefully to Sandra. "I need to speak with my son privately." "Actually," Walter interjected, "we've already completed the admission process. Your room is ready, Dad. We thought you might want to stay tonight, see how you like it." Stay tonight? Without any of my things, without any discussion or consent? I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Walter hefted the small duffel bag. "We brought some essentials: pajamas, toiletries, a change of clothes. We can bring more of your things later once you're settled." I turned to Sandra. "I have not agreed to this. I have not signed anything authorizing this." Sandra looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Mr. Johnson, I was told you had agreed to a trial stay. Your son handled all the paperwork as your power of attorney." I realized then that Walter must have forged documents, perhaps even my signature. The room seemed to spin around me as the magnitude of the betrayal sank in. "I want to go home," I said firmly. "Now." Walter and Diana exchanged glances. Diana checked her watch with exaggerated concern. "We actually have another appointment we need to get to. Why don't you just give it one night, Dad? See how you like it." Another appointment. More important than abandoning your father in a nursing home against his will. My voice was shaking now with anger, more than fear. "It's not abandonment," Walter said, his tone suddenly cold. "It's what's best for you. The doctor agrees you shouldn't be living alone anymore." "What doctor?" "I want to speak to this doctor immediately." "He's not available today," Walter said smoothly. "Look, we need to go. The kids will be waiting for us." And just like that, they were heading for the door. Sandra, looking increasingly distressed, tried to intervene. "Perhaps we should reschedule this when everyone is more comfortable with the plan." "No need," Walter said firmly. "My father just needs time to adjust. He'll be fine once he settles in." I moved to follow them, but a staff member appeared at the door, effectively blocking my exit without being obvious about it. I watched through the window as my son and his wife got into their car and drove away, leaving me stranded among strangers. Sandra tried to be kind, showing me to a small room with a single bed dresser and television. The walls were institutional beige, the floor covered in easy-to-clean vinyl that mimicked wood but wasn't. A small bathroom with grab bars by the toilet and shower completed the depressing space. "You'll get used to it," Sandra said gently. "Many residents find they enjoy the social activities and not having to worry about cooking or cleaning." I said nothing, sitting heavily on the bed as she left. The small duffel bag contained 2 sets of underwear, a pair of pajamas, some basic toiletries, and 1 change of clothes. Nothing personal, no photos, no books, nothing that connected to my life of 68 years. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed with its thin mattress and overly starched sheets, I stared at the ceiling and felt tears slide down my face for the first time since Louise died. Not tears of sadness, but of pure rage. My son had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. He had stolen my freedom, my dignity, and planned to steal my home as well. As I lay there in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the facility around me, one thought crystallized in my mind. This was not how my story would end. Walter might think he had won, but he had severely underestimated his old man. The game wasn't over yet. A full week passed with no sign of Walter or Diana. Each morning I expected them to arrive with an apology, an explanation, or at the very least more of my belongings. Each evening I went to bed disappointed but increasingly determined. Pine Grove's daily routine was rigidly structured. Breakfast at 7:30, lunch at noon, dinner at 5. Activities in between bingo craft sessions, movie afternoons. Most residents seemed resigned to this regimented existence, but to me it felt like a prison schedule. I tried calling Walter's cell phone repeatedly, but my calls went straight to voicemail. When I asked to use the facility's phone to make an outside call, I was told my care plan restricted outside communications for the first 2 weeks to help with adjustment. I'm not a child or a prisoner. I protested to the administrator who informed me of this policy. "You can't restrict my phone access." "It's for your own good, Mr. Johnson," she replied with practiced patience. "New residents often struggle with the transition. Limited outside contact helps you integrate into the community more quickly." The room they had placed me in was in the assisted living wing, though I needed no assistance with daily activities. The staff seemed perplexed by my independence, clearly expecting someone much frailer based on whatever Walter had told them. The food was bland and institutional, nothing like the fresh vegetables from my garden or the recipes Louise had taught me over decades of marriage. Each meal was a reminder of everything I had lost: my home, my independence, my dignity. My one stroke of luck came in the form of Jasmine Taylor, a young nurse with kind eyes and a rebellious streak. She found me sitting alone in the common room on my 7th day, staring out the window at the parking lot, watching for a car that never came. "Mr. Johnson," she said, sitting beside me, "you don't seem like our typical new resident." "That's because I was brought here against my will," I replied bluntly, expecting the same dismissive response I'd received from other staff members. Instead, Jasmine studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I thought something seemed off about your admission. You're too independent for assisted living, for one thing." "My son lied to get me in here," I explained. "Claimed I have cognitive issues and can't live alone anymore. None of it's true." Instead of dismissing me as confused or difficult, Jasmine listened as I explained my situation in detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Unfortunately, I've seen this before," she finally said. "Adult children who find it more convenient to warehouse their parents rather than care for them. Usually there's money involved. My house," I said bitterly, "and my savings, my car." Jasmine looked around to make sure no one was watching, then pulled a cell phone from her pocket. "You can use my phone to make a call. Just be quick about it." With shaking fingers, I dialed Frank's number, praying he would answer. After 3 rings, his gruff voice came on the line. "Frank, it's Oakley," I said quickly. "I need your help." "Oakley? Where the hell have you been? I've been knocking on your door for days." "Walter put me in a nursing home called Pine Grove. I'm about 30 miles northwest of town. He's claiming I have cognitive problems and can't live alone." Frank swore colorfully. "That explains the activity at your house." "What activity?" I asked, my heart sinking. "There's been a cleaning crew there for days, hauling stuff out, bringing painting supplies in." I tried to ask what was going on, but they said they were hired by the owner. "Walter's getting the house ready to sell," I said, the reality hitting me like a physical blow. "I think so," Frank confirmed. "I saw them taking furniture out yesterday. Some went into a storage unit truck, but a lot of it looked like it was going to the dump. My family photos, Louise's quilts, the books I had collected over a lifetime. The thought of these treasured items being discarded like trash made my blood boil. Frank, I need a huge favor. Can you try to save anything important? They're throwing out family albums, the quilts from the master bedroom closet, my important papers from the desk in my study." "I'll do what I can," Frank promised, "and I'll find a way to get you out of there. This isn't right." Jasmine signaled that she needed her phone back. "I have to go," I told Frank, "but please help me if you can." After ending the call, I asked Jasmine if I could use the phone again to call Walter directly. She hesitated, then nodded. This time, Walter answered on the second ring. "Hello." "It's your father," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "The father you abandoned at Pine Grove a week ago." A pause. "Dad, I was going to call you today. How are you settling in?" "How am I settling in?" I repeated incredulously. "Like a man imprisoned against his will. I want to come home. Now." Another pause. "Dad, we've been over this. The house is too much for you to manage. You can't live alone anymore." "According to whom?" "Not according to me. Not according to any doctor I've ever seen." Dr. Matthews said. "I want to speak to this Dr. Matthews. Give me his number." "He's very busy, Dad." "Look, we're doing what's best for you." "What's best for me?" or what's best for you. Frank tells me you're emptying my house, getting it ready to sell. Walter's voice turned cold. The house is too expensive to maintain empty. The property taxes alone are outrageous. The money from the sale will pay for your care at Pine Grove. I don't need or want care at Pine Grove. I want to go home. That's not possible anymore, Dad. What do you mean, not possible? We've already accepted an offer on the house. The sale should close in 3 weeks. The room seemed to spin around me. You sold my house without my permission, without even telling me. As your power of attorney, I have the legal right to make these decisions for you. I never gave you power of attorney, I nearly shouted. Walter's voice became artificially patient, as if speaking to a child. You signed the papers last Christmas, Dad. Don't you remember? We were concerned about your memory even then. I had signed no such papers. The magnitude of Walter's deception was staggering. What about my things? My furniture, Louise's belongings? We've kept what's important, Walter said dismissively. The rest was outdated and wouldn't fit in our house anyway. Your house. What does your house have to do with my belongings? A slip. Walter paused before answering. We're keeping some things in storage for you. Diana's voice suddenly came on the line. She must have been listening the whole time. Oakley. We had to make hard decisions quickly. The real estate market is hot right now, and we got an excellent offer on the house. Almost $900,000. That will pay for many years at Pine Grove with plenty left over. Left over for what? For whom I demanded. Diana hesitated before replying. Well, we do need a larger house. The kids are growing and with the baby coming. Baby? What baby? Another slip. Oh, Diana said softly. We were going to tell you in person. I'm pregnant. Due in February. Under other circumstances, news of another grandchild would have been joyous. Now it just felt like another manipulation, another excuse to take what was mine. So you're using my house money to buy yourselves a bigger place. What about my car, my savings? The car was old, Walter cut in. We sold it to a dealer. As for your accounts, they'll be used exclusively for your care. Whatever's left will go to the grandchildren eventually. I want out of here, I said firmly. Today, come get me. That's not possible, Dad. We're in the middle of moving. The new owners take possession of your house next month. There's nowhere for you to go. I'll figure something out. Just come get me. I think you need to accept the new reality, Walter said coldly. Pine Grove is your home now. We'll visit when things settle down. The call ended abruptly. I sat holding Jasmine's phone, shaking with rage and disbelief. I heard enough to get the picture, Jasmine said, softly taking back her phone. They can't do this to you, Mr. Johnson. Not legally. They already have, I said bitterly. No, Jasmine insisted. If you never gave power of attorney, what they're doing is fraud. It's elder abuse. It's criminal. That evening, as I sat alone in my room contemplating the enormity of the betrayal, the facility's phone rang. When I answered, a small voice came through the line. Grandpa, it's Amanda. Amanda. My heart leapt at the sound of my granddaughter's voice. Sweetheart, how are you? I miss you, she said, her voice breaking. Mom and Dad said you were too sick to talk to us, but I didn't believe them. You were fine last time I saw you. I am fine, Amanda. There's nothing wrong with me. Then why are you in that place? Why are they selling your house? They're getting rid of all your stuff, Grandpa. I saw them throwing away your books and Grandma's things. Tears stung my eyes. I don't want to be here, Amanda. Your father brought me here against my will. A small sob came through the phone. I knew it. Trevor and I both knew something was wrong. Dad said you have dementia and can't remember things, but I knew that wasn't true. It's not true at all, I confirmed. Amanda, I need you to be brave. Can you do something for me? Anything, Grandpa. Do you remember my friend, Frank the neighbor, with the golden retriever? Yes, the nice man who gave us lemonade that time. If you can tell him I need help, tell him to contact Jackson Wright. He's an old friend who's a lawyer. Can you remember that name? Jackson Wright, Amanda repeated. I'll try, Grandpa, but I have to go now. Mom's coming upstairs. I love you, Amanda. And Trevor, too. We love you too, Grandpa. We'll help you, I promise. The line went dead, and I sat there holding the receiver, torn between hope and despair. My 12-year-old granddaughter had more loyalty and courage than my adult son. It was both heartbreaking and inspiring. As I lay in bed that night, the full reality of my situation sank in. Walter and Diana had coldly calculated this entire scheme. They had fabricated medical issues, forged legal documents, and were selling my house and possessions without my knowledge or consent. They had imprisoned me in this facility, and were using my own money to pay for it, while planning to use the proceeds from my house to buy themselves a larger home. The depth of the betrayal was almost incomprehensible. My own son, my flesh and blood, had decided I was worth more to him as assets than as a father. He had looked me in the eye and lied repeatedly, all while dismantling the life I had built over decades. That night I made a decision. I would not be a victim. I would not quietly accept the future Walter had planned for me. I would fight back with every resource at my disposal. Walter and Diana had underestimated me, thinking my age made me helpless and compliant. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The next morning, Jasmine approached me during breakfast. Mr. Johnson, I have something for you, she whispered, slipping a small piece of paper into my hand under the table. On it was written, Jackson Wright called Pine Grove asking about you. Said he's your attorney. Facility denied you were here. He's filing emergency petition. Frank, coming tonight at 11 p.m. East Entrance. Hope surged through me. Amanda had gotten my message to Frank, and Frank had contacted Jackson. My old college roommate had become a respected elder law attorney, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, but who had always said to call if I ever needed legal help. Thank you, I whispered to Jasmine. I don't know how to repay you for your kindness. She smiled. Just beat the system that thinks it's okay to warehouse seniors against their will. That's payment enough. Throughout the day, I carefully packed the few belongings I had in the duffel bag Walter had left. I hid the bag under my bed and tried to act normal, participating in the afternoon bingo game and eating dinner in the communal dining room as usual. At 10:30, I turned off my lights as if going to sleep. At 10:50, I quietly dressed and retrieved my hidden bag. The hallways were dimly lit at night, with only a skeleton staff on duty. Most of the residents were asleep by this hour. I made my way slowly toward the east entrance, an emergency exit that Jasmine had told me was minimally monitored. At precisely 11, I saw headlights flash twice in the parking lot beyond the door. Frank had arrived. The door had an alarm, but Jasmine had promised to disable it temporarily during her rounds. I pushed the bar and held my breath. No alarm sounded. I stepped out into the cool night air, my first taste of freedom in 8 days. Frank's old pickup truck idled near the curb. I hurried as fast as my arthritic knees would allow, throwing my bag in the back before climbing into the passenger seat. Go, I said urgently, before someone sees us. Frank pulled away without turning on his headlights until we were out of the parking lot. Once on the main road, he let out a whoop of triumph. Jailbreak successful. Damn Oakley. I haven't had this much excitement since Vietnam. Thank you, I said fervently. I don't know how to repay you. Seeing the look on Walter's face when he realizes you've escaped will be payment enough, Frank growled. That boy never did appreciate what he had in you. As we drove through the night, Frank filled me in on what had happened since my abduction. The cleaning crew at my house had removed most of my furniture. Some items had been taken to Walter and Diana's home, others to a storage facility, and much had simply been discarded. I managed to rescue some things, Frank said. Your photo albums were in a box headed for the dump. I grabbed those, plus some of Louise's quilts and jewelry I found in trash bags. And I got your important papers from your desk before they cleared out your study. Tears pricked my eyes. Frank, I can't thank you enough. I also contacted that lawyer friend of yours like Amanda asked me to. Smart kid, that one. Called me from a school phone so her parents wouldn't know. Where are we going? I asked suddenly, realizing I had nowhere to stay. My place for now, Frank said. I've got a spare room. Not fancy, but it's better than that nursing home. Walter will look for me there first, I pointed out. Let him, Frank said grimly. I'd like to have a word with that son of yours. Jackson Wright was waiting at Frank's house when we arrived. Despite the late hour, he was fully dressed in a suit, his silver hair neatly combed, looking every bit the successful attorney he was. Oakley Johnson, he said, embracing me. It's been too long, old friend. Though I wish we were reuniting under better circumstances. Over coffee at Frank's kitchen table, I told Jackson everything that had happened. He took notes, his expression growing darker with each detail. This is elder abuse. Plain and simple, he said when I finished. Financial exploitation, false imprisonment fraud. Walter could face criminal charges for this. I don't necessarily want my son in jail, I said. I just want my life back. That might be complicated, Jackson admitted. If they've already sold your house, we'll need to act quickly to stop the sale. As for the power of attorney document, if Walter forged your signature, that's a serious crime. He must have, I insisted. I never signed anything giving him control over my affairs. We'll need to move fast, Jackson said, checking his watch. First thing tomorrow, we're going to my office to prepare emergency injunctions. We need to freeze your accounts before Walter can empty them, stop the house sale, and invalidate the fraudulent power of attorney. What about the nursing home? I asked. Won't they report me missing? Let them, Jackson said firmly. You're a competent adult who was placed there under false pretenses. They have no legal right to hold you. But where will I live? I asked. If Walter has already sold my house. One step at a time, Jackson counseled. For now, you can stay with Frank. We'll sort out the housing situation once we've secured your legal and financial position. That night, lying on Frank's guest bed, I felt a curious mixture of emotions. Anger at Walter's betrayal, certainly. Fear about my uncertain future. But also, unexpectedly, a surge of determination and even excitement. For the first time since Louise died, I had a mission, a purpose that went beyond simply existing day to day. Walter had underestimated me badly. He thought my age made me vulnerable and passive. He was about to discover just how wrong he was. The next morning, Jasmine called Frank's house. She had covered for my absence as long as possible, but eventually had to report that I was missing. The facility was in an uproar, and Walter had been notified. He's furious, Jasmine reported, demanding to know how you could have walked out without anyone noticing. They're checking security cameras now, but I made sure the east exit footage had a convenient technical problem last night. Thank you for everything, I told her sincerely. You risked your job for me. Actually, Jasmine said, her voice lighter. I quit this morning. I've accepted a position at the community health clinic. I couldn't work at a place that treats people the way they treated you. By 9 a.m., Jackson, Frank, and I were at the offices of Wright Legal Services. Jackson's assistant, a sharp young woman named Tara, had already prepared preliminary paperwork. First, Jackson said, we need to file for an emergency injunction to stop the sale of your house. Then we need to invalidate the fraudulent power of attorney. We'll also file a complaint with Adult Protective Services and possibly the police, depending on how Walter responds. And my accounts? I asked anxiously. My savings. Jackson smiled grimly. Already handled. I called in a favor from Judge Henderson first thing this morning. Your accounts are frozen until further notice. Walter can't touch them. Next, Jackson contacted a trusted real estate agent named Samantha Wilson. She arrived within the hour, a brisk, efficient woman in her 50s. If the house hasn't closed yet, we can potentially unwind the sale, she explained. But if you decide you don't want to move back in, I can help you sell it properly for full market value, with the proceeds going to you alone. The idea took root immediately. Did I want to return to the house now tainted by Walter's betrayal? Perhaps a fresh start would be better. But the decision would be mine, not Walter's. I think I want to sell, I said slowly, but on my terms, not Walter's. and I want to get top dollar, not a rushed sale." Samantha nodded. "We can make that happen. The market is strong right now, and your neighborhood is particularly desirable." By afternoon, Jackson had filed the necessary legal papers. Judge Henderson, an old friend of his, had expedited the proceedings given the circumstances. The fraudulent power of attorney was suspended pending investigation. The house sale was temporarily halted, and my financial accounts remained frozen except for withdrawals I personally authorized. Now Jackson said, a gleam in his eye, "I think it's time we invited Walter to a meeting." Here I asked, suddenly nervous at the thought of confronting my son. "Yes. On our turf with legal witnesses present. I want him to understand exactly the situation he's in." Jackson's assistant made the call. "Mr. Walter Johnson, this is Tara Patel from Wright Legal Services. We're requesting your presence at our office at 10 a.m. tomorrow regarding the matter of Oakley Johnson's estate. Yes, it is urgent. No, I cannot provide details over the phone. Thank you for your cooperation." While we waited for the legal process to unfold, I worked with Jackson on another important task, revising my will. The previous version had left everything equally to Walter and my grandchildren. The new version would be very different. "I want to set up trust funds for Amanda and Trevor," I explained, "for their education and future needs. Walter and Diana receive nothing." Jackson nodded, taking notes. "We can arrange that. The trusts can be structured so Walter has no access to the funds. They'll be managed by a trustee until the children reach an appropriate age. And I want to include a provision explaining why I've made this change," I added. "I want the children to know the truth when they're old enough to understand." "A letter of explanation," Jackson suggested. "We can include it with the will to be read when the will is executed." That evening back at Frank's house, I sat on his back porch, watching the sunset, a strange calm settling over me. Tomorrow would be difficult, confronting my son and the full extent of his betrayal. But for the first time in weeks, I felt in control of my own destiny again. Frank brought out 2 beers, handing one to me as he settled into the chair beside mine. "To fighting back," he said, raising his bottle in a toast. I clinked my bottle against his, to surprising the hell out of them. That night, I wrote 2 letters, one to Amanda and Trevor, explaining what had happened and assuring them of my love regardless of their parents' actions. The second was to Walter, expressing my profound disappointment, but also leaving the door open, however slightly, for reconciliation in the future if he could truly understand and regret what he had done. I sealed both letters and gave them to Jackson the next morning to be kept with my new will. Whatever happened next, I had taken back control of my life and my legacy. Walter might have thought he was dealing with a helpless old man, but he was about to face a father who had found his strength again. The next morning I dressed in clothes Frank had rescued from my house, a blue button-down shirt Louise had given me for our last anniversary, khaki pants, and my comfortable loafers. I wanted to look like myself, not the helpless old man Walter believed me to be. Jackson's office occupied the top floor of a small professional building downtown. His conference room featured a large oak table, comfortable leather chairs, and a wall of windows overlooking the city. I sat at one end of the table, Jackson beside me, Frank positioned near the door like a sentinel. At precisely 10 a.m. Walter strode in, Diana trailing behind him. They stopped short when they saw me, shock registering on both their faces. "Dad," Walter said, his voice a mixture of surprise and anger. "What is this? We've been worried sick about you." "Have you?" I asked calmly. Funny way of showing it, abandoning me at a nursing home for over a week without visiting. Diana found her voice. "You can't just leave Pine Grove. You need supervised care. They've been looking everywhere for you." "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson." Jackson interjected smoothly. "Please have a seat. I'm Jackson Wright, Mr. Johnson's attorney." "Attorney? Dad doesn't need an attorney," Walter scoffed. "And who are you to interfere in family matters?" he added, glaring at Frank. "I'm the neighbor who stopped your crew from throwing away family photos and heirloom quilts," Frank replied evenly. "I'm the friend who helped Oakley when his son betrayed him." "Betrayed?" Diana's voice rose an octave. We were trying to help Oakley can't live alone anymore. He's not safe. According to whom, I asked. Not according to any doctor I've ever seen. Walter's face flushed. Dr. Matthews clearly stated. There is no Dr. Matthews in this city who has ever treated me, I interrupted. We've checked. You invented him to justify your actions. Jackson placed a folder on the table. Let's discuss the fraudulent power of attorney document you've been using to liquidate your father's assets. Walter paled visibly. It's not fraudulent. Dad signed it last Christmas. Did I? I leaned forward. Show me this document with my signature. Walter and Diana exchanged nervous glances. We don't have it with us, Diana said quickly. Convenient, Frank muttered. Jackson opened the folder. We have here a sample of Mr. Johnson's actual signature from his legitimate legal documents and a copy of the power of attorney you submitted to Pine Grove and the real estate company. Handwriting experts will easily confirm the forgery. This is ridiculous, Walter sputtered. Dad's memory is failing. He doesn't remember signing it. My memory is perfectly fine, I said quietly, but yours seems selective. You don't remember me telling you repeatedly that I was happy in my home. You don't remember abandoning me in a facility against my will. You don't remember selling my possessions without my consent. The door opened, and Jackson's assistant Tara entered with another man I didn't recognize. He wore a badge on his belt and carried a small notebook. This is Detective Michael Ramirez Jackson, introduced him. He's with the Elder Abuse Division of the Police Department. Walter jumped to his feet. Police, this is a family matter. Financial exploitation of an elder is a criminal offense in this state, Detective Ramirez said calmly. So is false imprisonment and fraud. Please sit down, Mr. Johnson. Walter sank back into his chair, his face ashen. Diana began to cry, mascara running down her cheeks. We were just trying to do what's best for everyone, she sobbed. The house was too big for Oakley. We needed more space for our growing family. It made sense. It made sense to steal my home and lock me away, I asked incredulously. We weren't stealing, Walter insisted. The money from the house was going to pay for your care. After you took what you needed for your bigger house, I pointed out. Diana's composure cracked entirely. It was all Walter's idea. I told him we should just ask you to help us with a down payment. But he said, why should we settle for that when we could have it all? Walter stared at his wife in horror. Diana, shut up. I won't shut up. You said your dad was rich and selfish, keeping that big house to himself when we needed it more. You said he wouldn't live more than a few more years. Anyway, so why should all that money just sit there? You said we deserved it for putting up with him all these years. The room fell silent. Walter's betrayal was now laid bare, not just by my accusations, but by his own wife's words. Is that how you see me, Walter? I asked quietly. As an inconvenience you've been putting up with. As nothing more than a pile of assets you're waiting to inherit. Walter stared at the table, unable to meet my eyes. Jackson cleared his throat. Here's what's going to happen now. The fraudulent power of attorney is already invalidated. The sale of Mr. Johnson's house has been stopped. His accounts have been frozen and will be returned to his sole control. What about our new house? Diana asked desperately. We've already put a deposit down. That's not my problem, I said firmly. Dad, please. Walter finally looked up. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But we're still family. You wouldn't want to see your grandchildren homeless, would you? My grandchildren won't be homeless, I replied. But they won't be living in a house purchased with stolen money either. Detective Ramirez cleared his throat. Mr. Johnson, do you wish to press charges against your son for the fraudulent documents and financial exploitation? I looked at Walter, this stranger wearing my son's face. Part of me wanted him to face the full consequences of his actions. But another part remembered the little boy who had once ridden on my shoulders, who had cried when I taught him to ride a bike, and he fell, who had beamed with pride when I attended his college graduation. Not at this time, I said, finally. provided all my assets are returned to my control, and Walter agrees to psychological counseling to understand the gravity of what he's done. Relief washed over Walter's face, quickly replaced by wariness. That's it. You're not going to punish me. Your actions have consequences, Walter. Natural consequences. I'll be changing my will for one thing. You've shown you can't be trusted with my estate. You're cutting me out, Walter asked, panic rising in his voice. I'm protecting my assets for those who have shown they deserve them. Amanda and Trevor will have trust funds for their education and future needs. You and Diana will receive nothing. But Dad, I'm not finished, I continued. I'm selling the house. Not because you forced me to, but because I choose to. I've decided I want a fresh start somewhere you don't have keys. Where will you go? Diana asked. That's no longer your concern, I replied. But I'll maintain a relationship with my grandchildren. They at least have shown loyalty and love. You can't keep us from the children, Walter protested. I'm not trying to, I said. I'm saying I'll have my own relationship with them, independent of you, and I'll make sure they know the truth about what happened here when they're old enough to understand. Jackson provided Walter and Diana with papers to sign relinquishing any claim to my property or finances and acknowledging the fraudulent nature of the power of attorney document. Walter signed with a shaking hand, Diana with angry, jerky movements. You have 48 hours to return any of my possessions you've taken, I added. Frank will come by to collect them. And what about Pine Grove? Walter asked. They're expecting payment. You can explain to them why that payment won't be coming, I said coolly, since you're the one who made arrangements under false pretenses. After Walter and Diana left, Detective Ramirez took my formal statement. Though I had declined to press charges for now, he wanted the details on record in case Walter tried anything similar in the future. You're being more merciful than many would be in your situation, the detective observed. He's still my son, I said simply. Misguided and greedy, but my son nonetheless. I'm hoping this serves as a wake-up call rather than the destruction of what family I have left. Over the next 2 weeks, with Jackson and Samantha's help, I sold my house to a young couple with 2 small children. They paid $920,000, all of which went directly to me. Walter and Diana were forced to forfeit their earnest money on the larger home they had planned to buy with my money. I found a comfortable 2-bedroom condo in a senior-friendly building near Frank's neighborhood. It had no stairs-wide doorways that could accommodate a wheelchair if I ever needed one, and a small balcony where I could still grow tomatoes in pots. At $350,000, it left me with substantial savings for my future needs. Most importantly, it was mine. A fresh start, unburdened by Walter's betrayal. The condo was close enough to the grandchildren's school that I could occasionally meet them for lunch or attend their events, building a relationship independent of their parents. Frank helped me move the possessions he had rescued from my house into the new condo. It was strange seeing my familiar furniture in this new space, like pieces of my old life, transplanted into a new reality. But there was something freeing about it too, a sense of having survived and moved forward on my own terms. Walter and Diana were forced to face the consequences of their actions. The loss of the earnest money strained their already tight finances. Walter's employer, an accounting firm with strict ethical standards, placed him on probation after learning of the incident. Their marriage showed signs of strain, with Diana openly blaming Walter for the failed scheme. Through it all, I maintained my dignity and independence. The very things Walter had tried to take from me became the foundation of my new life. You know, Frank said one evening as we sat on my new balcony watching the sunset, Walter thought he was taking your power away. Instead, he helped you find a strength you didn't know you had. I considered this. Maybe that's true. I was just existing before going through the motions since Louise died. Now I feel alive again with purpose. Nothing like a good fight to get the blood flowing, Frank grinned. Nothing like betrayal to show you who your real friends are, I replied, raising my glass to him in gratitude. The confrontation with Walter had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. I now knew exactly where I stood, who I could trust, and what mattered most to me. In trying to take everything from me, Walter had inadvertently helped me discover what I truly valued: my autonomy, my dignity, and the genuine relationships that supported rather than exploited me. That clarity was perhaps the greatest victory of all. 6 months after the confrontation in Jackson's office, my new life had taken shape in unexpected ways. My condo, though smaller than my house, felt like home. I had salvaged enough furniture and mementos to surround myself with comfortable familiarity, while the fresh start gave me an opportunity to simplify and focus on what truly mattered. Frank remained a steadfast friend, coming over for weekly card games and helping me set up my container garden on the balcony. Jasmine, the nurse, who had helped me escape Pine Grove, became another regular visitor. Now, working at a community health clinic, she sometimes consulted me on engineering projects for the clinic's renovation, valuing my professional expertise in a way Walter never had. The initial weeks after leaving Pine Grove had been difficult emotionally. I experienced waves of anger, betrayal, and grief for the relationship I thought I had with my son. Some nights I would wake up disoriented momentarily, thinking I was still trapped in that small room with its institutional beige walls. Other times, a casual comment or news story about elder abuse would trigger a rush of memories and emotions that left me shaken. But gradually, the raw wound of Walter's betrayal began to heal. Not completely. There would always be a scar. But the acute pain subsided, replaced by a more manageable sadness, and eventually, a determination to create something positive from the experience. My relationship with my grandchildren evolved in positive ways. Amanda, now 13, and Trevor, 10, were allowed to visit me after school twice a month. Walter and Diana, chastened by the legal consequences they had narrowly avoided, and the financial setback they had suffered, did not interfere with these visits. During one such visit, Amanda asked the question I had been expecting. "Grandpa, why did Dad try to put you in that place and sell your house?" I had thought carefully about how to answer this inevitably. Sometimes adults make bad decisions when they're focused on what they want rather than what's right, I explained. Your dad made a serious mistake, but he's still your father and he loves you very much. But he lied about you being sick, Trevor pointed out. He said you couldn't remember things anymore. Yes, that was wrong, I acknowledged. But everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes and do better. That's what your dad is trying to do now. It wasn't entirely true. Walter had made minimal efforts at reconciliation, attending the court-mandated counseling sessions, but remaining defensive about his actions. Our interactions were strained and infrequent. Diana avoided me, entirely embarrassed by her role in the scheme and her subsequent betrayal of Walter during the confrontation. Yet I refused to poison my grandchildren against their parents. The cycle of family dysfunction had to stop somewhere, and I chose to be the one to break it. My experience led me to a new purpose. Through Jackson, I connected with a support group for elderly victims of financial exploitation. Hearing their stories, many far worse than mine, I realized how prevalent the problem was, and how few resources existed to help victims. I began volunteering at the senior center, giving presentations about elder rights and financial protection. My engineering background proved useful in explaining complex legal concepts in accessible terms. Soon I was invited to speak at community centers and retirement communities across the city. The greatest protection against elder abuse is knowledge and community. I would tell my audiences, know your rights. Keep copies of important documents with trusted friends. Maintain social connections outside your family. These simple steps can prevent what happened to me from happening to you. My work brought me in contact with other seniors who had experienced betrayal by family members. Their stories helped me process my own pain and anger. Gradually, the raw wound of Walter's actions began to heal, though the scar would always remain. Jasmine encouraged me to join a grief counseling group, not just for Louise's death, but for the loss of the relationship I thought I had with my son. You're mourning the son you thought you had, she explained. It's a real loss, and you deserve support through it. The group helped immensely. Sharing my story with others who understood loss and betrayal lightened the burden I carried. One participant, Eleanor, had lost her husband and then been swindled by her nephew. Her resilience in rebuilding her life inspired me. As months passed, my anger toward Walter gradually transformed into something more complex. I still couldn't trust him, but I no longer felt consumed by resentment. When he eventually reached out asking to meet for coffee, I agreed. "I've been doing a lot of thinking in therapy," he said awkwardly, as we sat in a neutral cafe. "What I did was inexcusable." "Yes, it was," I agreed simply. "I convinced myself it was for your own good, but really, it was about what I wanted. The bigger house, the easier inheritance, not having to worry about you as you got older." He stared into his coffee. "Diana and I are separated now. She says she can't trust my judgment anymore." I felt a flicker of sympathy despite myself. "I'm sorry to hear that." "I deserve it," Walter admitted. "I just hope I haven't lost my children's respect too. And yours, though, I know. I don't deserve to ask for that." "Trust and respect have to be earned, Walter. They can be rebuilt, but it takes time and consistent actions, not just words." I know, he nodded. "I'm trying to be a better person, a better father. Maybe someday a better son, too." I made no promises that day, but I left the door slightly open for a future relationship, one built on new understanding and clear boundaries. Whether Walter would walk through that door remained to be seen. As I approach my 70th birthday, I reflect on the lessons of the past 18 months. The betrayal by my son taught me painful but valuable truths: that family ties don't guarantee loyalty, that age doesn't diminish my right to autonomy, and that standing up for myself isn't selfish but necessary. Most importantly, I learned that it's never too late for a new beginning. My life now in many ways is richer than before. I have purpose in helping others avoid my experience. I have freedom to make my own choices. I have genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or expectation. The money from selling my house sits safely in diversified investments, providing security for my future needs and eventually for my grandchildren's education. Amanda and Trevor will receive the bulk of my estate through a trust managed by Jackson, with Walter having no access to the funds. Yet material security is only part of what I've gained. The greater wealth is in self-knowledge and inner peace. I know now that my worth isn't measured by what I own or what others can take from me, but by the dignity and courage with which I live each day. If you're watching this and facing your own challenges with family members who see you as a burden or an obstacle, rather than a person deserving of respect, remember this: you have the right to make your own choices. You have the right to protect yourself. And you are never too old to start again. The deepest betrayals can sometimes lead to the most profound growth. In losing what I thought I had, I found something more valuable: my authentic self, my courage, and a community of true friends who see me as a whole person, not just an elderly man with assets to be acquired. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family members who tried to take away your independence? How did you handle the situation? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the strength to protect themselves. And if you found value in my story, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, by supporting each other, we build a community where elders are respected, not exploited. Thank you for listening, and may you always maintain your dignity and independence no matter your age.